I'm here in New York today with Danielle Diliberti. She's the CEO of Sommsation, which is a marketplace for wine. Two things that I love, commerce and wine.
When we built the business, we built it thinking about 2030 and 2035 and 2040, really thinking about how do we build for the future? What do we want to take from the past? And for the most part, it's just the wine and just the traditions of winemaking that we want to take and really focus on, a modern tech stack that is meant to power the future of the entire wine industry.
Would you say Sommsation is a tech company?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, our backbone is the technology. I don't think it'll ever be completely online. I don't think it'll ever be only e-commerce. So that blend of tradition in person and the tech component is really what we're aiming for.
Here's Paula Malcadi, and this is episode 26 of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds.
Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so tell me everything about it, because it is a new business. How you came up with it?
Yes, Sommsation is just about 3 years old from the concept, and we launched in October of 2022. And it's exactly what you described. It is a commerce marketplace for wine. There was just nothing like it out there yet, which kind of boggles your mind when you really think about it.
And that was like during the pandemic, where you during the pandemic looking for wine and you're like,
That is exactly what happened. So I think, you go back and everyone is kind of stuck wherever they are. It could be at home. There's a little bit less socialization going on, a lot of stir craziness. And in certain areas, it was really hard to access quality wine. We recognized that there was a lack of distribution of high quality premium wines, especially in the United States. So I think if you go to Europe and South Africa and other places, the model is a little bit different. But very specifically in the United States, there was a lack of access to really great wine. So we thought, let's put our brains together, let's solve that problem, and let's build a premium luxury lifestyle marketplace that serves a community that really prides themselves on drinking great things with an experience attached to it, with the convenience of what e-commerce brings to the table.
And I was seeing some numbers. There are like 11,000 wineries in the United States, which I had no idea. If I heard about 10, I think it would be too much. And you're giving access to these people, right? To the final consumer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And every time I state that fact, people just, their eyes get wide. I think in the entire world, there's probably close to 30,000 wineries, but specifically in the US, there's over 11,000 wineries, and 90% of them never hit a shelf, whether that be a restaurant, a hotel, a grocery store, a fine wine shop. The majority of really great wines are only in the tasting room, if that. Sometimes they're made and really never to be seen outside of, private networks and things like that. So we thought, not only is this going to help these really great winemakers who pride themselves producing quality grapes to make great wine and really focus on the care of the environment and sustainability, but it's also going to benefit consumers who think they're drinking really great wine, and in reality, they're all drinking the same thing that is really mass produced. So we really focus on trying to match consumers' preferences with really great product and create like a win-win situation for everyone in a way that is really sensory focused. We're always trying to think about how the product is made, why it was made, who's behind it, craft that story, and then really enjoy it with friends, family, colleagues, strangers even.
And how do you do this sensory through digital?
That is the fun part, probably also the challenging part. But we partner with each of our winemakers and each of the wineries to really get an understanding of their brand, their story. We digitize that. So we call it kind of bringing the wine room to you, or bringing the tasting room to you. But in addition to that, we have over 40 sommeliers on our team who intimately understand the winemaking process, intimately understand food and wine pairings and Epicurean excellence. And so they really focus on telling that story and bringing it to the forefront of the digital experience. So that way, we were trying to blend the tradition and the history and the rich culture of wine with the digital experience to make it more accessible, a little bit more convenient. And then at the end of the day, we're on our phones and in our pockets and on our computers so many hours a day. And that's one of the last things to not be digitized. So we thought we would spend the time to really do it and do it right.
All right, so let's go back a little bit before that then. You have a technology background, as I understand.
I do.
Can you tell us a little bit, how was your journey to become an entrepreneur?
I started my career as an accountant, so I was a CPA, and I spent a lot of time with numbers and spreadsheets, so I learned very quickly that technology could be your friend if you let it do some of the work for you. So I always had a knack for understanding technology and tools and data structures. I invested a lot of time learning those things because I realized if you would learn it up front, then it could potentially save you some time in the future. And obviously over the last 10 or 15 years, as technology has really taken off and as smartphones have become just part of our day, I've continually stayed on top of the technologies and really keep that curiosity, but also go really deep into the understanding of the infrastructure. I work really closely with my engineers and other technologists to make sure that I'm leveraging the technology and the tools for the right purpose, which is really what led to the entrepreneurship and the build out of Sommsation.
Here in the show, I usually have the tech people that comes from legacy platforms where they have to re-platform and renew everything to what is more common nowadays, right? And you are a young company, so you don't have the problem of the legacy. How was it for you to structure the architecture of the business?
It is such a competitive advantage for us. I think that's one of the things that we really embraced when we concepted Sommsation. My team and I have worked together for the last 7 or 8 years at a minimum. Some of us have worked together for 10, 12 years plus, and we've had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of different technologies. I've been a part of more transformations than I'd like to admit. So when we built Sommsation, we really embraced composable, and we took the lessons learned from some of those transformations that we've had and understanding that some technologies are not meant to be brought in the future. Some technologies are really meant to stay in the past. And so when we built the business, we built it thinking about 2030 and 2035 and 2040, really thinking about how do we build for the future? What do we want to take from the past? And for the most part, it's just the wine and just the traditions of winemaking that we want to take and really focus on, a modern tech stack that is meant to power the future of the entire wine industry.
Can you tell me more? Because I think that's what everybody wants to know, right? What is the tech architecture that you can leverage into 2040?
When we think about MACH, which is microservices, APIs, cloud-based and headless technologies, that is really the framework of composable. There's this concept of taking a monolithic enterprise platform, and a lot of people refer to that as an ERP or things that are really the backbone of major corporations. Sometimes they're hard to maneuver around. When you think about agility and moving quickly and building fast, it's hard to move a ship really fast, just like it's hard to move a big enterprise technology really fast. So by building various components, whether we build them ourselves with our proprietary technology or we partner with a ton of really great vendors and providers that really focus on a single craft, you can put together a tech stack that will move faster, that speaks to the various components through the APIs, and that can really provide rich data. So we really lean into that concept, and we build a lot of our infrastructure in-house with our own engineering team, but we also have great partners for our CMS and for payment processing, for some of the things that require a complexity that sometimes make more sense partnering than building yourself. But by leveraging the various components of our tech stack, we can swap things in and out based on what our goals are for the business and the business strategy, which again...
So if in 10 years you need to change something, it's not such a big problem.
Exactly. And there's always work to be done, but rather than even thinking about 10 years, we can be thinking about 3 years from now. I've already changed out some of our marketing modules and our email marketing system 18 months into the business, which people thought I was crazy and unheard of. But when you have the ability to outgrow things, and you have the ability to make changes, it gives you a competitive advantage.
And I think it gives the pressure in the vendor too, because I think if you're a monolith technology and that the retailer, that the business have to rely on you, right? Because it's very difficult to change it. But if you are an element of the composable architecture, you can be changed at any time. So I think they have to evolve.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I definitely think it fosters not only competition, but innovation. And it also fosters true partnership. That's one of the things that I am really pleased about with our partners, is that it's a two-way street. There's a lot of dialogue. I'm on the MACH advisory board, and just the transparency and the conversations that happen, not only at things like the MACH conference or at meetups or things like that, but just day in and day out. There's so much information posted on various partners' websites. People have academies, because you have to be transparent enough to keep people relevant in the conversation, and then to also have that feedback loop are what are customers looking for, because if not, someone is going to come out and build it, right? Like there were 3,000 MarTech solutions 10 years ago, and now there's 15,000.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy to keep up with everything.
Impossible.
Let's go back to the beginning where you're creating the marketplace. So you have to actually talk to the people that are selling your platform and to the consumers. How did you do this both ways to grow your ecosystem?
It was a lot of puzzle piece shuffling, if you will, right? At the end of the day, I always joke that...
Did you drink a lot of wine?
We drank a lot of wine. I'm still drinking a lot of wine. That's one thing that's so interesting about the wine industry. As soon as you think you know something, you're like, oh, I know even less than I thought. And the more curious you get, the less you know somehow, which is a fascinating part of the industry. And because wine is grown year after year, it's dependent on the weather, the terroir, different technologies within the winemaking process. So that keeps us curious, but also, understanding a lot of the regulatory considerations, the supply chain considerations, all of the things that go into the entire industry as a whole become so complex so quickly that without modern technology, it's really manual, it's slow, it's archaic, it's fragmented. And that's really what we saw industry. We still see it in the industry, right? We're really trying to be the forefront leaders, that category creator, if you will, of building something different. And it takes time. It takes behavioral change by the producers to share their inventory.
Because I've been to many wineries, and I think what makes them beautiful and charming is that they still do things as they used to do 200 years ago. So it's not like an automated warehouse, right? Like, how did you manage that?
Yeah, a lot of it is true partnership again. So we spend time with the producers and think about, what are you really good at? What do you want to do? Versus where can we help you? So we started just solving problems, and a lot of the problems relate to when everyone's doing the same thing and they don't want to be doing it. That was a place where we could insert ourselves and say, let us do it for you. We'll build a centralized tool that everyone can leverage, both consumers can benefit from it and you all can benefit from it. So that creating that kind of shared economy allows producers to do exactly what they want to do, make good wine, and then it gives consumers an ability to discover it, just like a marketplace, right? You think about some of the great marketplaces out there, Amazon, Airbnb, and some of the tools like Uber and things like that. We couldn't imagine our lives without them. And so now you insert something like Sommsation and you're like, wait a minute, I need this. So that's what we're out to do.
Well, I think wine and the way you're speaking about it gives me the feeling of community. I think you end up like engaging with the community. That's how I would do with my friends, right? Like, let's have dinner here at home because I got these 2 bottles of wine from Sommsation, and that's how they did it. Do you have any programs or anything that engage the consumers?
We do. So we are continuing to build out programs, really listening to consumers and what they want. A couple of our key programs are Rebel Wine Club, which is the concept of continue to explore, constantly stay rebellious against just drinking the same old wine. So we have a monthly wine club that ships 3 bottles of wine, all curated by our sommelier team. And then we have Saturday sessions and Sunday school, which are very much community focused. You can have a group over at your house and learn more about the wine digitally through a screen, or you can meet new people because it's community led and you sign up. And then we do a lot of really fun events because I think you said it already. At the end of the day, it's about the experience. You want to know where the wine is coming from and understand that story. So we bring together a lot of winemakers and producers and sommeliers and people that really enjoy wine to create those community led events. And we try to just make them a little bit more elevated every single time. So bring in chefs, try new foods, drink wines that you've never heard of, do blind tastings, all of those things that kind of create the engagement and that give us the information to help create a digital engagement experience, right? I don't think it'll ever be completely online. I don't think it'll ever be only e-commerce. So that blend of tradition, in person, and the tech component is really what we're aiming for.
Yeah, it's very hard to imagine any type of commerce without the physical experience nowadays as well.
Yeah, and especially I think one of the big things too that we're learning, the more I get exposed to the world of wine and really understand each of the key regions, the more I fall in love with it. So we always get questions, where should I go next? And so we're starting to do luxury trip planning and things like that as well, but then we'll also make some do-it-yourself components so that people are really armed with the right information to then take themselves on their own journey if they don't want to rely on us.
And that builds trust, and therefore it builds loyalty, which I assume.
That's the plan, and I think that's the exciting part of this industry is because there's nothing else like it. We really have an opportunity to listen to what consumers want, build them what they want, in return gain that trust, gain that credibility to really build loyalty and really kind of change the way the industry is thinking about the future.
Would you say Sommsation is a tech company?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, our backbone is the technology and all of the information and data that powers the experience and the engagement. But we couldn't do it without our partners, which are the wineries and the sommeliers.
So I think you can leverage that against any competition, really, because if they're doing just because it's fun to sell wine, you actually know how to do it.
Yeah, as we progress and as AI becomes more relevant and prominent, it's hard to stay competitive without leveraging technology. It's a competitive advantage, if you will. And I think one of the interesting things about specifically this industry is, probably 20 years ago, some of the technologies didn't exist for this to make sense. So we timed it really well, and we're now kind of at the forefront of it, but it helps us move at the speed by which consumers want to be moving.
Yeah, and do you intend to have your own distribution centers, or it all comes directly from the producers?
Right now, we don't have plans to have centralized distribution centers because coming from the producer is really one of our value props, directly, the winemaking facility to your doorstep, as opposed to sitting in a warehouse or being on a store shelf collecting dust. That's really one of the key value adds. But, we always are keeping our ears and eyes open.
And the reason we are here sitting in New York is because we were at MACH 3. What made you join the advisory board of MACH?
I've been with MACH since the beginning. It is such an advantage, again, to be a part of an ecosystem that really is thinking about the credibility and the future of technology, right? I think with technology, there's still so many unknowns. So the Alliance really brings together like-minded people who are focused on building a future that is trustworthy, keeping people together that have the same end goals but bring different components to the table, if you will, but also the credibility and the credential that comes with being a member of the MACH Alliance. And as a client, as a customer of that technology, it helps you move a lot faster because you know that stamp of approval is not in vain. And then it also just raises the standard for everyone, right? Like you mentioned earlier, talking about the more options there are, the more, kind of competition it creates, or kind of keeps people on their toes. And I think that the MACH Alliance really promotes that because you have all of these people talking, like, what is this person doing? What is this company doing? And so that innovation bone just is there. It just really arms you with information to make smarter decisions, which in turn helps us move faster and be a little bit more strategic from a business perspective.
And there was a few women, and you as member of the Alliance, how do you see the representation of us women in this tech?
The good news is that the MACH Alliance does a really fantastic job of making it a priority to have women on stage, to invite women to speak, to give us opportunities like this to meet. The not so good news is that there's still not enough women in technology to get us to the numbers that we want to be. So I think the Women in MACH initiatives and having mentor-mentee programs and kind of always keeping it as part of the discussion is really, really helpful. There's, I think, more women starting in technology than men coming out of college. But when you get to the more senior level, naturally men have still gotten promoted earlier, faster. And so those numbers get really skewed. So I think for us, it's continuing to have the conversation, promoting and supporting women, and really continuing to push on the men to be a part of that movement, because women bring something great to the table.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And you as a leader, as a woman, as a leader, as someone that understands tech so much, and you came from bigger companies and you're now on your entrepreneurial journey, how did that change your leadership?
I reflect a lot on what I would have done or what I did or what I didn't do. And I try to share that with my team a lot. One of the things that I recognized is that probably more often than not, I had something to say and no one asked me, so I didn't say anything. So if someone asked me a question, I would always bring an answer to the table. If someone asked for a volunteer to do work, I would always raise my hand and do it. But I never asked if I could get involved in something. I never provided answers to questions that people didn't ask me. So that's one of the things that I wish I would have done differently, and that I really coach my team, both men and women, to do, which is, if you have a strong point of view, come with a recommendation, come with a solution, and really kind of stick your neck out there. So that's one of the things that I think about and that I want to pass on not only to my team and my peers, but my mentees. It's take the risks, not only be innovative, say yes, and sometimes pose the question before it's posed to you to even have the opportunity to say yes.
And how do you see the future of commerce? Digital or not?
One of the big takeaways that I had from MACH 3 this year, and we spoke a lot about it at the conference, was even 3 years ago, everyone was talking about all of the problems that existed in e-commerce and all of the points of frictions and all of the what ifs. And just this past week, there were so many stories of major companies, the top brands in the world, as well as companies that some people don't realize they've never heard of but are touching on their phone, and companies like that Sommsation that are only 3 years old, where people are now talking about the solutions and the progress and the change that's being made. So just to see that evolution of how fast things are changing is really exciting. I think that's going to continue to happen. I think not only with the new technologies, but all of the things going on with AI and personalization, it's going to move so fast. So keeping, I think, eyes and ears open is one thing. Keeping our little legs moving, like if we're ducks in a pond, is necessary because you will get from point A to point B and point B to point C. But I think we've got to do it fast, and we have to be risk takers, but also create those partnerships and lean into everything that's available now, because it's really fascinating. I don't even know where we're going to be in 10 years, which is really exciting.
It is. If we didn't even know that we will have a pandemic that will accelerate many things, right? Imagine what we can have in 10 years or 20.
Yeah. The pandemic, I think, was a huge accelerator. It forced a lot of people that didn't want to think outside the box to do it out of necessity, which I think is also empowering and influencing the younger generations that they can think outside of the box. Like, that's all they know now, which is what I think is really exciting versus, the mentality of not yet, we don't need to do that, I don't want to invest the money. It just kind of left the room. So it's interesting.
You have no time to
exactly
to consider that.
Exactly.
And talking about younger generations, then there's this big trend of less alcohol consumption. How are you preparing for that?
It's absolutely something that we're keeping an eye on, and I think the beauty is that the data is available for us to have a strong handle on it. One of the things that I think we're excited about is that sometimes quality over quantity is really meaningful. So while consumers are drinking less, we are seeing that they're drinking a much higher quality beverage when they are drinking, and also interested in some of the alternatives. So, for example, some wineries make olive oil. But also, I think when people understand that winemakers have organic processes and that it's sustainable and that they have access to learn about all of that, the curiosity is going to stay high. And when people understand that drinking, one bottle of high quality wine is probably better than consuming 3 bottle equivalent out of a box, then it kind of evens out the problem a little bit. So our focus is really on education, engagement, making sure that people understand what they like and why. And, I think if you think about Europe, Italy, France, Spain, the mentality there has not been as trendy as the mentality potentially in the US. So we're spending a lot of time with our European counterparts to understand, why do you have 5 or 6 generation of people drinking, and why do you have wine at the table all the time? And so if we can expose that through our digital experience, then we're hoping that we can kind of shift people moving away from it and instead really embracing what it is and the social and community component of wine.
And as a marketplace, do you think there's a space for you to engage in the retail media side of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that, again, in this industry is a perfect place to be, because things like podcasts, things like blogs, things like being able to stream in and watch someone do something, almost like a news broadcast. There's so much content that relates to media that is about explorability and education, and being able to centralize that just to make it convenient for the consumer is something that we're really excited to bring to market.
I hope that we can have this conversation again with a bottle of wine. Which one would you pick?
Absolutely. So right now I am really keen on Italian Amarones and Barolos.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It was very inspiring.
Thank you.